This is Sandy Tankas for TOS50.com, and I'm here today with Michael Brown, who has produced a new documentary film. What is the film called?
The film is called The Quest, and it is, at first glance, a car story, and specifically a Corvette story, but it's much more than that. I know you've seen the film. There certainly will be something for the car aficionados and people who are interested in the history of specific kinds of cars and so forth. But it really is, as I'm pleased to say Jay Leno gave us a quote for the dust jacket, it really is more than that. It's really a love story. And number one, it's about people's love for cars, but it goes beyond that. It's a family love story. And when an unforeseen tragedy happens to one of the people that we focus on throughout most of the film, his son decides to take up the banner and fulfill his late father's wish. So there really is a great core story there, whether you like cars or not.
Well, actually, the story is a very inspirational story that starts in 1960.
It does.
With a race at Le Mans and several Corvettes.
Yeah. Of course, anyone, even if you're not an officially a race fan or car race fan, almost everyone's heard of Le Mans in France. Typically, Westerners pronounce it Le Mans because it looks like that, but the French pronounce it Le Mans. And so 1960, even though the races began in 1923, 1960 was the first year that Corvettes had raced at Le Mans. There were 4 Corvettes entered that year. Only one of them officially finished and actually won its class. Not much was expected of the Corvettes. They were bigger, they were heavier than all of the European cars at long-established marques that had typically raced at Le Mans. But then, as was the case back then, the attitude was race them on Sunday, sell them on Monday. So these cars literally disappeared over the next 30 or 40 years until collectors and restorers realized that, hey, these are significant cars, specifically in Corvette history, and we should try to find them if they still exist, restore them, and they're going to be very valuable one day. So we go back and reconstruct what happened to all 4 of these cars, but with the focus on the number 3 car, which is the one that won, and that was the Quest, conducted by originally Chip Miller and finally his son Lance Miller.
The thing that I was wondering about is, how did you become aware of this story? It is a love story, but how did you become aware of it?
And I'm a filmmaker, obviously, but I'm also a Corvette aficionado. I bought my first Corvette in 1985, and I still have it, and I've added a few more since. I have a total of 13 Corvettes. So I was trying to combine in the past few years my love of cars with what I do for a living, and so I have a small collection of Corvettes, and people like to come and look at them, and I like to look at other people's collections. So I started going around the country with the intent of perhaps putting together a cable show on Corvette collections. It's called vetcollections.com. We have a website. I knew about Lance Miller. I'd been going to Corvettes at Carlisle by myself for many years. I'd never met him. I met him at the Barrett-Jackson auction about 4 years ago. I knew he had a collection that he had gotten from Chip, his father, and that he had added to. So I told him what I was doing. He said, sure, I'd be glad to participate. We went to Pennsylvania a few months later. And it was during the course of my interviewing him that he told me about this number 3 car and what his dad had sought to do. So I set aside my Vet Collections idea. I said, this is a great human interest story, and I devoted about 2.5 years to producing the documentary, which ultimately became The Quest.
Was there any part of doing the documentary that was particularly enjoyable, that was more interesting to you than?
Well, it was really peeling back the layers of the story and uncovering a lot of things that people who had been involved up to that point really had never even known about. Perhaps we brought some new information to the table. As a video producer, it's always exciting to find some old film that you didn't know existed. Even a man named Kevin McKay, who was a friend of Chip Miller's, who actually located the car. It was owned by a man in St. Louis who had no idea about the history of the car. He talked to him on the phone periodically for 7 years before he ever convinced the man to sell the car, and yet during all that time, he never met him face to face. So we went to St. Louis, tracked him down, interviewed him, and we brought a lot of people together in this story that had been separate entities but had never connected. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, I highly recommend that anybody, whether you're interested in cars or not, take a look at this film if they have the opportunity to do so.
Well, thank you, Sandy. I appreciate that. And if people are wondering how that, we do periodic screenings around the country, but you can go to questdocumentary.com. There's more information about the film, and you can order a DVD if you'd like.
And we'll put the information up on the screen as well. So thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Sandy. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.